Hey everyone and welcome to my channel. Today I want to share with you my autumn wrap up. So this was the last quarter of 2024. I do quarterly TBRs and then I'll let you know how it goes, and I can already tell you that this one did not go well. So let's go into a couple of stats and then I'll tell you which books I have managed to read and which books I haven't. So we started the quarter with October. In October I had 6 books on my TBR the TBR that reaches my reading goals of the year, so reducing my physical TBR and then my series and authors I wanted to read. So 6 books on that TBR, and of those 6 books I managed to start and finish 1, which was not a great job. This means that 17% of my October reading were books from my TBR, which is not great. I want this number to be at least around 50, and 17 is nowhere near 50, so that was very disappointing. I also read a couple of library books in the month of October. I had 4 books checked out from the library during the month, and of those 4 books I started 3 and I finished 2, and that means that again 17% of my reading were library books. Now you might wonder why it was 17% with the October TBR, but I had 1 book I kind of brought over from September that I finished in October, so that's why it's 17% for both of these. And that means I read a ton of books I bought new in October. Good job me! So next we have November. In November I had 6 books on my TBR to read for the month. Out of these 6 books I started 2 and I finished 1, so doesn't sound very promising yet. And that means that 20% of the books I read in November were TBR books, because I didn't read very much in November. So at least it's 20%, but it's still not very promising. And then I also had checked out a couple of books from the library in November, and I had checked out 3 books. Out of those 3 I started 2 and I also finished 2, and I finished the 1 library book I had left over from October's TBR. So in the end 60% of the books I read in November were library books, which is quite a lot, but then November was quite a lot for me as well, and I needed some cozy books to kind of get me through the month, and I got those from the library. Last but not least we have December, and in December I had again 6 books on my TBR. Out of these books I started 2 and finished 2, and I finished the 1 leftover one from November, and that means that 23% of my reading in December were TBR books. So we have a slight increase throughout the month, but like it's not very good, to be honest. And then last but not least we had 3 library books in December checked out, and out of these 3 I started and finished 2, so that means that 15% of the books I read in December were library books. And with that we have finished the year. So did this go well with the TBR reduction? No, this year was definitely worse than last year. Last year I definitely made more of an effort to read the books on my TBR, but this year at least I managed to read the books that I got, so I don't have a lot to add to the TBR in 2024. I think it is only 5 books, but still it's some books. I need to do better in 2025 and I need to get this TBR to 0. But now let's go through the books and we can discuss which ones of these will stay on the TBR for 2025. So first of all, there is a couple of big fantasy books that I don't own physically that I wanted to mention. The first book on my TBR was Jonathan Strange and Mr. Norrell. I listened to this on audio and I finished it. And then I had the Mistborn Era 1 books on my TBR as well, and out of those I only finished the first one, that is The Final Empire by Brandon Sanderson, and I still have Well of Ascension and Hero of Ages on my TBR for 2025. There is another book that I don't have here because it just always is on my nightstand, because I still believe that one day I will read it that way, and that is Goodnight Stories for Rebel Girls, which I have not read. Okay, we have a German book, 24 Türen by Klaus Modig. This is kind of an advent calendar book where you read a chapter leading up to Christmas every night, and I did read this. It wasn't great. Then we have Equal Rights by Terry Pratchett, the third book in the Discworld series, and I did read this. And this is where the good news ends. We have Any Way the Wind Blows by Rainbow Rowell. This is the third book in the Simon Snow series, and I want to reread the first two, so I did not get around to this. Then we have this collection of stories and fairy tales by Oscar Wilde, which is still in the plastic, so I have not read this. Then we have some non-fiction that I wanted to read in November. We have The Unwomanly Face of War by Svetlana Alexievich, and I have not read this. Another non-fiction I didn't get to is 3 Cups of Tea by Greg Mortensen and David Oliver Rellan. Have not read this. We have a continuation to a mystery series that involves cats, and this is Murder on the Prowl by Rita Mae Brown and Sneaky Pie Brown, and I have not read this. I really need to continue on with this series. I have forgotten almost everything about it. And then last but not least, we have this stunning collection of the Grimm's fairy tales. This is like the original version of the fairy tales. So we have 2 books, like 2 volumes, and then 1 volume is just like notes on these fairy tales. I really want to read this one day because I think it is so fascinating. Some of these stories are also still written in the local dialect that they were like written down first. So I want to get to this so badly. It is so gorgeous. So yeah, my autumn really wasn't great for reading, especially in November. I just had such a dip. I was really struggling with my mental health, with what's going on in the world, and just my life in general. Work was also like very terrible in November. So yeah, I have managed to get off 2 big fantasy books. So I will vouch to do better in 2025. We'll see about that. And I hope you enjoyed seeing these wrap-ups. I hope it was fun to see the progress or not so progress on my TBR reduction. And I will talk to you soon. Leave a like or nice comment. I always appreciate those. And bye!